tuning in. Feel free to ask any questions because we can answer them in real time. So, Gabe, thank you so much for coming on to the show. I'd love it if you could introduce yourself, tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, I'm coming to you from Honduras right now. It's where I live the majority of the year. And so based on that, I have third world internet. So if I like freeze up or I disappear for a second, I'm sorry, third world problems. What are you going to do? But yeah, my name is Gabe. I run the Board Game Design Lab community and podcast. And it's just been like a little over
Oh no.
The 4 years now.
Okay. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, you froze for a little bit there.
I'm hoping it doesn't keep happening. The internet recently has been really good. Like I've been recording a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's been fine. So hopefully it's going to be fun. But anyway, on a game design community and podcast, and I've been blessed with the opportunity to write books and do all sorts of really fun things in the game design side of the gaming industry, and then also design some board games here and there. Lately, I've been doing a lot of solo games. And, 'tis the season over the last year or so for 1 and 2 player games. And so I've just been enjoying doing those. And so, yeah, I've seen lots of things, interviewed 220 something people at this point for the show. So yeah, it's just been a wild ride. 4 years ago when I started this whole journey, no clue, right? I was like, yeah, maybe I'll do a podcast for a while. And here we are 4 years later. And it's been crazy. So anyway, I appreciate you having me on your show.
Wow, 200 something people. That's a lot of
crazy.
Really like amazing insights on the podcast. For anyone who is listening and you haven't heard of Gabe's podcast, go and check it out. It is just full of knowledge. Okay, so since we're on to talk about marketing, right? I'd love to kind of start off by just getting like a just very general big picture, right? Like what has marketing been like for you throughout the years, right? You've launched so many campaigns in so many different types of like categories per se, books, the starter kit, the game, like talk to us about marketing and how that's evolved for you.
Yeah, definitely. So I think I've run 10 campaigns at this point. I had one that I canceled and then relaunched. So I think I'm 9-1, I think is my ratio, something like that. I've done Indiegogo along with Kickstarter. I did a little crowdfunding mini campaign on my website where I downloaded this software where you could kind of emulate Kickstarter and just tried that, right? So I've tried lots of different things. And I think the biggest thing that I've learned and that I just keep coming back to is understand your audience, understand what they want. Don't answer questions that they're not asking. Like, be really careful about that. And I think sometimes you can do that. Like Henry Ford talks about, if he had asked people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse, where he gave them the car, and obviously that revolutionized things. But I'm not going to assume that I'm Henry Ford. I'm not going to assume that I'm Steve Jobs announcing the iPhone and changing, modern history. Like, probably not. And so I think leaning into the audience that you are designing things for, right? Whether it's games or books or whatever, is understanding what they want, ask them what they want, what kind of game they want, what kind of product they want, and then lean into that and give them new and fun and exciting things, but still wrapped around the thing that they're asking for. And so I think that's the biggest thing. Understand your target audience, your customer avatar, and lean into that. And be careful about straying too far away unless you're doing a passion project and you're like, if I don't make any money, it's fine. But in general, lean into it.
Yeah, no, that's a great advice that talk about leading into your audience, kind of knowing who your audience is. For people just getting started, and a lot of people who are new game designers don't have that background in marketing. How do you kind of recommend people to really truly understand who their audience is and what they want?
Yeah, for sure. So I think as designers, oftentimes we get into this designing games that we want to play, right? We'll look at the market and think, well, I really wish there was a game about this, or I really wish the game used this mechanism and had this theme. And then you're like, well, I guess I might as well design it. Okay, in that case, you're the target audience. So it makes it a little bit easier because you can just kind of ask yourself questions. Now, when you start getting into bigger publishing and start trying to branch out, obviously a little bit different. But I found a lot of value in literally writing it down and creating this kind of fake person that I then use as my decision filter, right? And so I'll give you an example from my podcast way back when, 4+ years ago, when I was doing research and trying to understand how do you do a podcast? How do you build an audience? What does any of this mean? I got this advice. And so I created my guy named Steve, and he was 35 years old, and he had 2 kids, and he had a 30-minute commute to work there and back, so an hour total in the car every day. And he was just getting into game design, and he wanted to get a game published. Like, that was his big goal, big dream. And so that was Steve. And so anytime I invited a guest onto the show, or anytime I had an idea for like a podcast episode or a product or a book or whatever, I could think about, okay, is this going to help Steve publish a game? Is this going to help Steve become a better game designer? Yes. Okay, let's do it. No, or maybe no, I don't know. Okay, let's not worry about it right now. Maybe we'll come back to that later. And so that's been super helpful for me. Now, in my publishing company with designing games, it's okay, I design games mainly right now for one player. Okay, so the game has to hit certain things to really be functional and fun and helpful and all that for one player, right? And so I'm always going back to, I don't know, I call the guy Bob, right? Bob, he doesn't have a bunch of people to play with. He really just enjoys playing games alone at night when the kids have gone to bed, and he's just kind of up and he's got some time to himself and he wants to relax, and he doesn't like video games that much, and he doesn't like TV. He likes games. And so how can I give Bob a really fun solo experience that then maybe Bob's wife wants to play every now and then. And so it's also got a 2-player variant in there where the game is just as much fun with the 2-player. So anyway, you start thinking through, who's this game for? Who's this product for? And then use every decision that comes up, just bounce it off of that fake person. Hey, Steve, what do you think? Right? And just kind of imagine what they would say.
No, those are great examples, both Steve and Bob, for the different types of things that you do. So now that you have this persona in front of you, like Steve, they can talk to, how do you kind of cut things that you don't need, and how do you decide really to cut things you don't need, or really kind of lean into what potentially Steve or Bob wants? Because a lot of the time, there's so much we want to do, and cutting things out is just the hardest thing because it all sounds so amazing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where going a bit beyond the imaginary friend can be super helpful. And, because a lot of times you're going to hear from Steve or you're going to hear from Bob, and they're going to tell you what you were already thinking anyway. And so that's always a danger to kind of only live inside your head. And so this is where playtesting, this is where talking to real people that are very similar to your target audience, but at the same time are different. And so going out and finding, diverse types of people who are still similar, still in the same area as that target person, and just talking to them, asking them questions. Regularly, I'll put out a survey in the Board Game Design Lab community and say, hey, here are some things I'm working on. Which ones of these get you excited? Which one of these, give me the top 3 that get you the most excited. And I can use that to go, oh, okay, that's cool. Well, I was really excited about this thing over here, but no one seems to care. And so let me not worry about that. And let me do these things that people are really excited about. Let me put the most energy and effort and resources and money and all that into those things. And it was just a matter of asking the question. And so obviously that helps once you've built up an audience, but the bigger picture is relationships. It's getting in the Facebook groups, it's getting online, Board Game Geek, wherever, and building relationships so that you can ask that question. And people aren't like, who are you? Are you trying to sell me something? I don't know who. No, you build relationships over time. And then when you ask, hey, I'm thinking about this, what do you think? And people go, oh, it's really cool. Oh, okay. Or I don't know. You get an honest answer. And so relationships.
Yeah, no, that all really boils down to that one word for sure, that relationship. Yeah. And you kind of touched on this a little bit, but I think since we have a lot of kind of new game designers who listen to this, what are your recommendations for people coming into this and starting to grow a community, right? How do you start forming those relationships? What do you do?
Yeah, definitely. So some advice I got years ago, actually I learned from Gary Vaynerchuk, who's kind of big in the marketing stuff, but I think this video is probably still on YouTube. It's called 1 is greater than 0. And his mentality early on was that 1 is always greater than 0. And so if you had a YouTube channel that had 8 subscribers, and early on, I don't think he does this anymore, but early on in his kind of getting out there in the world, if you had 8 subscribers and you said, hey, would you come on my show? He'd say, oh, you have 8 subscribers. Oh, 8 is greater than 0. Right. And that's kind of his mentality. It's what can I constantly be doing that is getting things out there? Because you never know that 1 that's going to actually turn into 1,000 or 1,000,000, whatever. And so I think having that mentality of 1 is greater than 0. So do something, right? Every day or every couple of days, schedule it if you have to. I know a lot of people are introverts and they hate social media. I hate social media. So what do? I schedule it. I schedule these questions. I schedule these times in my week that I'm going to go online and interact with people. And because, social media is what it is, and it's draining to me. I don't get energized from social media. I get drained. And so I have to be very aware of that, because it's not just about my time management. It's also about my energy management, my self-management as far as my week, right? And so I think that's a big thing. Andy Stanley had a really cool idea. I heard one time, he said, do for one person what you wish you could do for everyone. There's not enough time to interact with everyone. So just do for one person what you wish you could do for everybody. And maybe right now it's just having a quick, conversation on Facebook or on Twitter or whatever about something. Someone asked about, hey, I've got these 2 box images. Which one do you think's better? Why? Well, okay, I wish I could do that for everybody. I can't. but I can do it for this one person right now. And that builds up a bit of a relationship. That way, maybe when I ask about my box image, my box art, then that person is like, oh, yeah, you help me. I'd love to help you too. And so it builds up this reciprocation in these relationships. Now, you don't do it for that. It's like, well, I'm going to help you, so you're going to help me, right? It's like, well, no, that's selfish, right? You do it just because, be a good human. But at the same time, these things always seem to come back. So, one is greater than zero would be my kind of boil it all down. Too long, didn't read.
Yeah, no, that's really, really a great point here, right? Like, one is better than zero. You just kind of keep going one step at a time in a way, right? Taking, right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot, just keep going slow and steady, pretty much. Yeah. And it's funny that you mentioned that social media can be pretty draining. Someone actually agreed here that social media can be pretty draining.
Right.
I'm the same way, to be honest. Like, it seems like I'm always online, but actually, like yourself, I schedule stuff. I even schedule in my calendar, between 1 and 2 p.m. every single day, I'm interacting. I'm in a Facebook group because it is really draining just to be on all the time. And I know a lot of people who kind of come to game design and are starting the marketing phase. They're like, I have all this energy, but then I'm just doing all these things and I just start constantly kind of deflating, and I don't know where to kind of take this energy now, right? Yeah. So for these people too, who have all this energy and then they're starting to like build these relationships, where do you think they should kind of focus on? Like, what for a Kickstarter launch in particular, where should they put their energies when they're marketing, when they're getting their game out, when they're starting to make these relationships?
Yeah, I think the first thing to understand, especially as a new creator, new designer, whatever, is play the long game. So many people come in and they just designed a game and they're super excited about it and they're super passionate about it. And they're like, I'm going to go to Kickstarter next week. It's like, no, don't do that, right? Give it some time. Let it breathe. I know it's hard to hear that, especially because you're so ready and you got this great new thing and nobody's ever seen it before and it's going to be better than Monopoly and all that, right? But just relax, right? Play the long game. I've talked to several marketers, and I'm not sure your belief exactly, but and maybe you can give some ideas for us the time. But a lot of people say, give it a year. Like, have a 12-month plan of building an audience and becoming kind of known in the different spheres, but the biggest thing is pick one that you know that you can be consistent in, and then be consistent there, right? So if it's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever, Board Game Geek, fine. Like, whichever one is kind of the easiest or the most likely for you to pour into, do that one. Like, don't just keep like beating yourself, like doing things that you hate, right? That's not a good way to be here for the long haul. With me, it was Facebook. I was already there a lot. I like it. I like it the least of the most. I don't know, like, it's the one I like the least, anyway, like, I hate Twitter. I'm not a big fan of Instagram. And so I don't spend any time hardly at all in those places. Facebook is like, it's fine. And so I spend my time there. And so I think figuring out what works for you personally and then leaning into that, but just relax, just breathe for a minute, build it up, right? Play the long game, build some systems. I feel like a lot of times people don't understand how important systems and habits are. They'll have a goal and they'll be super excited and like run as fast as they can to get to that goal. And whatever that is, and we'll call it success for this. Like, I don't know if it's a Kickstarter or getting a game on a shelf with a publisher, whatever. We'll just call it success for like a generic term, right? Don't have a goal of success. Create a system that makes success inevitable. It is something I've really picked up over the last year or so. It's like, how can I construct my life with different systems and habits and understandings and being productive and managing myself and my time and my energy and all these things so that success becomes an inevitable byproduct, an inevitable side effect of how I'm just living my life. I don't have a goal of go have a successful Kickstarter. No, I'm going to create my life in such a way that successful Kickstarters are just bound to happen. And it's a little bit easier to live because it's day by day, and you're not so overwhelmed by this like massive 500-pound gorilla. It's like, no, it's like a little caterpillar or something like that. Like, it's something like tiny little bug, and I can deal with that today. I can do one thing. It kind of helps build this system that helps build these habits. And so, yeah, relax, slow down, build some systems, build some habits, and have fun.
Yeah, this is a great conversation to have, actually, because a lot of people, like you were kind of pretty much touching on, like, they burn out, right? They try to do too much and they burn out, and they don't have those systems that can get them into a habit to get to success. So we were talking about this a little early before we came live, but there's a lot going on with Board Game Design Lab, especially in this new year, and you're releasing so many things. Like, I'd love it if you could kind of provide an example maybe for everyone, like how these systems and habits, they roll out in your life and how you kind of built these systems and habits, because I think it'll be really applicable for other game designers coming in really conceptualizing how they spend their time and their energy too.
Yeah, absolutely. And so one thing that I've noticed recently is that certain things have become muscle memory just because I've done it so long, right? And it started off, honestly, and this is some takeaway that I got from somebody way smarter than me in the business world, and he recommended this, and I'll just continue to recommend it to other people because it was super helpful, is sit down and create your perfect week, minute by minute. Like track every minute from Sunday morning through Saturday night, right? And whatever perfection looks like, put that down, right? And so, okay, certain things you just have to do. I have to be at my job Monday through Friday from 9 to 5. Okay, well that's just in there, right? I have to have a date night with my spouse or significant other. We do that every Wednesday. Okay, that's a non-negotiable. That's in the week, right? But then you're going to start finding all these pockets of time that don't have a obligation. It's like, okay, how can I spend those pockets of time to help improve myself, help improve my business, design a game, write a book, create a podcast, whatever it is, but start scheduling that out in perfection. Like, okay, all things perfect. No one gets sick. A kid doesn't have to stay home from school. I don't have to work extra at the office this week. Like those things are always going to happen. But if you have at least something you can aim at and say, okay, here's what I'm aiming towards, then it's a lot easier to actually accomplish. Now, it's going to be rare that a perfect week actually plays out the way you drew it up, but at least you have something to aim at, right? And so if you look at your schedule on Thursday and it says from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m., I'm going to work in a game, then do that, right? As opposed to coming around Thursday and saying, oh, it's 7 o'clock. I guess I could do something. I could design a game. I could watch Netflix. I could, because more than likely you're going to default to whatever like the lowest common denominator is. And so you're going to find yourself like on your phone, just scrolling through or watching YouTube videos of cats. Like you're going to find yourself doing that. But if you schedule it and say, okay, I am putting this in my schedule. Like this is what I do in the same way that I'm going to go to work from 9 to 5. And that's like, I got to do it. Okay, I'm going to put this on the schedule. And from 7 to 9 on Thursday night, I got to design games. I have to work on my podcast. I have to write the book, whatever, right? But it's on the schedule. And so the more you do that, and what I've learned is like, I was doing that for a very long time and failing, right? And, it wasn't perfect. Lots of days I'd be like, all right, it's 7 o'clock. And like, I'm exhausted. I'm just going to watch YouTube and get over it tomorrow. But the more I just tried to stick to the schedule and the more my family started to understand, hey, when dad is here on this day at this time, this is what he does. Like they know every Tuesday, dad is editing a podcast. Like that's what I do because it's going to go live on Wednesday. And I've done that 211 weeks in a row, I think. 211 weeks in a row. Almost every single time on a Tuesday, I edit a podcast and it's pretty much the same time. They know that. I know that. My body knows that. And so when it rolls around on Tuesday, it's muscle memory where my brain's like, hey, you got to edit a podcast, today. It's like, oh yeah, you're right. Like it's like second nature. And so the more you do it and the more you stick to those schedules, the more it just becomes a system. It just becomes part of who you are and it makes it a little bit easier.
I love it. I love that you've done this and you have this example of like, again, 200 and something weeks.
Yeah, it's like 211, something like that. I think. Yeah, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Never expected to be here too. I didn't have like some master plan. It was like, hey, I like game design. I wanted to do a podcast, and I was like, well, that sounds fun. We'll do that for a little while, and here we are 4 years later. Like
a little while.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay. And between all of this too, all this podcasting, all this editing, all these things that you've built up, you've launched multiple Kickstarters.
Yeah.
Right. How do you like approach marketing for Kickstarters now? Right. Like since you have 9-10 Kickstarters under your belt now, is it this kind of the same as what a first-time game designer does now, or is it something completely different?
Yeah, it's definitely not different in too much. It's a little easier, obviously, because I've done it and I've built up a crowd and built up an audience, and people have an expectation, right? When I launch the next game, which is coming up here early February, I think February 9th is my tentative date. It's a game in a series of games that were already successful, right? So that's the kind of thing you build up kind of a line of games, or you build up an audience around types of games. Like I said before, I design mainly solo games now. And so it's a little bit easier for me to go into a solo gaming community on Facebook or online somewhere and say, hey, I'm working on this game. I'd love for you guys to check it out. I'm like, oh yeah, this Gabe. He's done a few of these. Yeah, I'll check him out. And so it obviously gets easier, but it's still relationships. It's still building up. Your presence, your brand. It's being kind. It's being nice to people. It's when a customer. I had several people during the whole COVID thing, a crisis, that would send me a message on Kickstarter and say, hey, I know I'm beyond. Like I know the game's at print. I know the game is like maybe even about to ship, but I need a refund. Like I just lost my job. It would be really nice if I could have that $50 back for groceries on and stuff. Can I get a refund? Duh. Like, of course. You know what I mean? Like, yes. But I've heard other creators not giving refunds to people. I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Because that is not going to help anybody, right? It's crazy to me. And I just be a good human, just be a good, kind person, right? And honestly, if the game had already shipped and was in transit, it was crossing the ocean to get to that person, like there's nothing I could do to bring it back, I would still give them a refund and say, hey, enjoy the $50 and enjoy the game, because it just feels like the right thing to do to me, right? But the cool thing is when you're nice to people, when you're kind, when you do your best to have excellent customer service, people are a whole lot more likely to back your next product. They're more likely to be evangelists for your next thing. It might be a game that they don't even care about, but they'll tell people about it because they like you. They like your company. You treated them well and you were nice and kind to them, encouraging. And so that's been super helpful as well. I've had so many people send me messages and say, hey man, this game is not for me, but I really appreciate all the stuff you've done for the community, all the podcasts, whatever. And so I back the game and I'm going to give it to a friend of mine who I think is going to love it. And awesome, because kindness reciprocates, and so I think that's a big thing. It's just get out there, be a presence, be known. You don't have to, constantly be. A lot of people get out there and they just like post constantly, all the time, all day, every day. I don't know that you have to do that. I don't think everybody's personality is built for that. Thank goodness. But it starts with that, and we can get into technical things about like Facebook ads and email lists and a lot of that marketing stuff. But I feel like you cover a good bit of that, and so I'm glad to talk about any of those things that maybe you want to ask on my perspective and on that. But I think at the core of it, it's get out there, build relationships. And it sounds simple, and it kind of is. And it just takes time. But yeah.
Yeah, no, this is a great conversation to be having, honestly, like, especially since you have so much experience doing this already and you're a 9-10 time Kickstarter creator. Two things that kind of sparked when you were talking about that. When you start going online, right, you'll find people who love your product, and you're going to find people who don't love your product so much. How do you deal with the people who don't love your product so much, right? Because there's every game that has haters. My favorite book has haters too, right? Like every movie has haters. How do you personally deal with that?
Yeah, so there's a few different strategies. One is ignore most of it. You got to be careful about reading too many reviews. I know like Jamie Stigmeyer has talked about, he never watches reviews of his games, and like I don't blame him. Like it's hard to hear people if they don't like your thing. And so I don't know. I think there's a couple different strategies. One is to go into it and realize that your game is not you. So don't take it personally. Just because somebody doesn't like my game has nothing to do with them liking me or not. And so if someone on Board Game Geek gives me a 1-star rating for a game and it's like, well, the game takes too long and it's too fiddly, and so it's like, okay, let me write that down. Maybe there is some truth into what they're saying, and maybe they're saying it in an unkind way, but I'm going to try to like separate the meat from the bones here, so to speak. I'm going to chew the meat, spit out the bones. And just maybe they have a good point. Right now, I come from a deep South football background where coaches there was no restraint in what they would say to you in criticism. So that also helps. I also have a writing background where I had a lot of professors in college that they didn't care about your feelings. Your feelings are not important. And so that also kind of helps, just being used to separating myself from the work. So that's part of it. But I also think, and if you look in general, the things that have a big group of people who love it and a big group of people who hate it typically do really well overall. But it's the things that are just kind of like, meh, it's okay. Like those things disappear and nobody really ever talks about them again. And so if you have a lot of people who love the game, but also a lot of people who hate the game or the book or whatever, that's probably a really good sign, right? Because that creates conversation, that creates tension, that creates people talking about it and thinking about it and being on their radar versus it just being okay. Yeah, that's fine. I don't love it or hate it. It's there. Nobody wants to just be there, And so, yeah, I think just take those things into account.
Yeah, that's a great advice there. I like to tell people too, like if they are kind of struggling with negative feedback, for example, I like to say like go to Amazon.com or something.
Yeah.
Just write in your favorite book. Scroll down to the reviews, like read the 1-star reviews.
Yep. Exactly. That's a really, really good point. And again, don't take things personally. It's okay, and at the end of the day, again, I design games that I love. Like as much as I'm making this for someone else, I'm making it for me too. And so I am also one of the the reviewers, right? And so if this is a game that I love and I really, really enjoy, I'm also going to make sure to take that into account. I'm not only going to take that into account, but it's at least going to have some kind of sway in how I feel about the project overall. So if someone says, man, I hate this, it's like, yeah, but I love it. So, and 1,500 people on Kickstarter, they thought it was okay too. So, I'm going to kind of take the whole. I feel like one of the issues online, especially, is that, a YouTube video might have 1 million views, right? And it might have 1,000 comments, and a bunch of those comments are negative. And we will hone in on the several hundred comments that are negative, and we will allow that to let us feel a certain way or give us a certain emotion. And we will disregard the fact that 900,000 plus people watched the video and it was fine. And so I think that's another thing is to not focus too much on maybe the wrong thing. Like don't miss the forest for the trees kind of situation. And so if you love the thing and you think it's fun and the people around you that you created it for really enjoy it, let that be enough.
I love it. I love that so much. That's such great advice. Like, don't miss the forest for the trees. Yeah. Right? Like, love that advice. And the other thing that I wanted to ask you, since you're in Honduras, right? A lot of people who talk to me say, hey, since I can't go to a convention physically, I can't show my game off physically, that means I can't market, right? But you're all the way to Honduras and you are, launching, game and books and starter kits and all this. Like, what does it mean for you to kind of be pretty much like solely all digital and market?
Yeah. I mean, if we were having this conversation 10 years ago, I would have no answers, right? But we live in exciting times where tabletop simulator is a thing and social media is a thing and Skype and the ability to, where do you live, Ellen?
In Seattle, Washington.
You are in Seattle, Washington. You are so many thousands of miles away from me right now, but we're having a conversation in real time that other people are watching live, right? And so we live in exciting times where there is no excuse. You know what I mean? So I feel like people that say those kinds of things maybe need to step back and identify, are you saying that because you're actually afraid to try? Like, are you allowing these things to kind of come up as excuses because you're actually not sure, like you're lacking confidence? So it's not that there are these obstacles. It's that you're dealing with maybe something personal or something psychological, or you're afraid to put yourself out there, or you're afraid of being rejected. Like, maybe there's something more to it. And I'm not trying to be your psychologist or your shrink or anything, but maybe there's something more, because we live in a time where obstacles have turned into opportunities, right? And that's kind of my mentality. Is like, I don't want to look at obstacles. I want to see them as opportunities. And something might crash and burn. Like I said, my first board game Kickstarter failed. Right. I didn't do a good job with the marketing on the front end. I didn't have enough preview videos. I didn't spend enough time building up an audience. I thought this is a really cool game. It's going to do great. Right. And I got 200 backers, and it was trending where I was like, well, maybe it'll fund on the last day, maybe, but let me just cancel it. Let me try again. Let me start over and do something else. And it didn't feel like failure. It felt like an opportunity to grow and to learn and to build up, some turn some weaknesses maybe and make them a little stronger. And so I think that's a big thing is understanding. They're not obstacles. They're opportunities. Now, you're going to have to be creative. Like, I've got a friend named Drew, who's my graphic designer. He lives in Arizona. And anytime I get a prototype from a manufacturer, or anytime we're trying to do something that has anything to do with physical components, I send stuff to him. It's like, hey man, I got a package coming to you from the Game Crafter. Just check it out. Make sure it all looks good, because it will take 3 months to get here to Honduras. And by that time, the Kickstarter is going to be here and gone. So, you got to get creative. You got to get some team, around you to kind of help fill those gaps. But again, there's no better time than today, and honestly, a year from now, I don't want you to look back and wish you had started today, right? I think is like an old Chinese proverb or something like that. And it says, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. And so that's kind of the way I just try to live.
Wow, that's like endless optimism from you. And I love it. I love it so much. That type of energy is kind of what we need, going forward into 2021 pretty much. And bringing up a question, right? We talk about kind of making the best out of everything. What are kind of the challenges or obstacles that you've faced in the past for yourself, for marketing your own games and things like that, you're marketing your own products, and how do you approach problem solving? Yeah, definitely. So,
biggest problem is there's only 24 hours in a day. I have to sleep. I have to eat. I have these children that apparently need part of my time. There's so many things. I know, right? Selfish. There's so many things that you just have to figure out how to work around. Now, another thing I've found, and I can't remember who I heard say this, but if you want to get something done, ask a busy person, right? Ask someone who already has too much on their plate, because they're already in that mode. And one thing I've figured out is like the more I schedule stuff, the more flexible I become. Like the more, because you're almost in that groove. You know what I mean? Like vacations are nice, but it seems like sometimes when I have a lot of time to get something done, I end up using it all, as opposed to like getting it done and having extra free time. It just never happens. Like it's like a fish, like a goldfish. Like you expand to whatever the size of the bowl is, it seems. And so I think that's part of it, and just maintaining your energy. You know, with some people, you just need to exercise better. You need to eat better. You need to stop drinking soda and alcohol. You need to maintain yourself and then your energy level and your brain. That way, when you do have time to work on these things, you're ready to go. Like you're fine. You don't want to be a couch potato because you're exhausted, and it's really because you haven't exercised in 3 months, so your body is just like wrecked. And so I think that's a big thing, is maintaining yourself, like self-care, but not necessarily I'm going to go take a hiatus for 6 months. Like maybe you need that, but I think just day in, day out, again, creating systems that create your best life and all that, and then problem solving gets a lot easier, right? When it's experience, right? I was talking to somebody. I did a podcast episode of my own show last night, and we were talking about creativity and how a lot of times people who are really, really creative are really the ones that understand whatever medium they're in really well, right? When we talk about athletes who are really creative, like a basketball player who has really like creative passes and really creative moves and stuff like that, more than likely that person really understands the game. They understand how the ball moves and the physics. They understand, all the different aspects of their body and their defender's body, all those things. And then they can be more creative because of the experience, because of the understanding. I think the same thing is true in art, whether you're talking about games or movies or books, whatever. The more you really understand what's possible and what you can do with certain components, or how you can use language to craft a scene and things, the more you understand that, and the deeper you get into it, and the more you read and understand other people, especially people better than you, they've been doing this for a long time, the more creative you can become, because you're understanding what's possible, and now you're trying to put your own angle, your own spin on it. And so I think that's another thing. It's just, again, give it some time, devote yourself to the craft. If you want to get good at this, then you a lot of people want full-time benefits when they want to give part-time effort. It doesn't work. Like there's no magical secret sauce or anything like that. It's time, it's energy, it's effort, it's devoting yourself to getting better, and then scheduling it.
Yeah, this is really, again, goes back to what we were talking about even before we came live here, where there's so much going on with Board Game Design Lab Plus, the new kind of version of Board Game Design Lab that you're creating, and now it all makes sense now how you're able to get this done as the lone person on your team, because you're scheduling, you're creating these systems, these habits. And speaking of Board Game Design Lab and the next phase, I'd love it if you could talk to us some more about that, because I know a lot of people who are listening are followers of you.
Yeah, definitely. So BGDL Plus, as I am super pumped. This has been a long time in the making. It was an idea way back, and I had no idea how to implement it. I did not have the ability or the skill set or the teammates or anything like that. But finally, things are starting to come together, where the goal, honestly, is to create the headquarters of game design, board game design online, right? So if you think of Board Game Geek, it's kind of like a hub for gaming in general. I want the BGDL Plus to be like the hub for game designers, right? So no matter what you need, whether you need to learn a new skill about how to use InDesign to do better graphic design. Okay, we're going to have training courses to do all sorts of cool stuff and teach you how to prototype and playtest and all those cool things, right? There's going to be a marketplace. Like I just need some books about game design. Okay, well, here's a marketplace full of really cool stuff, all game design related, that'll help you out. It's like, well, I just need some like community. I need people. Okay, well, it's going to have like a social media aspect to it, where it's just game designers coming in. Your Uncle Bob, who says like crazy stuff at Thanksgiving, he's not here, right? We don't have to worry about him saying crazy stuff about politics. He's not here. It's just us, So there's a social media aspect to it. There's like ways for you to connect with like co-designers and playtesters, and bring those people all in one place, and house your documents, and house your photos, and house all the PDFs for your game, and your updated rules, and so it's a lot of stuff. I was talking to a friend of mine this morning actually about how can we put a random board game design idea generator on the site, right? It's like if you're stuck and you're like, I don't know what to design, well, go to this link and hit the button, and it'll tell you should design a worker placement game that has a theme of Vikings, and the win condition is you have to get rid of all your cards, and the constraint is that it uses, you can only have 4 cards in your hand at a time. I don't know, something like that, right? It's just random generated stuff. So tons and tons of stuff. It's gamified, and so you can go in, you can track your progress, right? There's ways for you to track like okay, today I play tested. So you go in the site you hit today I play tested. You hit the button, and it's going to give you experience points, right? That you can kind of track and you can level up, and there's different things you can do with the points on the site, right? And there's a lot of stuff. It's even more than that. But anyway, I'll kind of stop there. But I'm really pumped about it. I think it's going to be a really helpful resource, a really helpful tool for game designers, whether you've been doing this 15 minutes or 15 years, for all of us to kind of come together in one central place. It's got a job board. So if you need to hire an artist, hire a graphic designer, or if you are an artist, or if you are a graphic designer, it's got a place for you to put your resume and say, hey, this is who I am. This is my work. If you want to hire me, here's my email address. And I really want to connect people, because Facebook is fine, but there's so much it can't do, right? And if you want to post, hey, here's my resume, well, in 10 minutes it gets buried underneath 100 other comments, and then nobody sees it, right? And so a place to come for like more long, like I call it like crock pot type stuff, right? Facebook's really good for microwave issues. I want a place to have like good things for microwave issues, but also crock pot issues where we can talk about things maybe that do take a little more time than the instant gratification of Facebook, right? You do want to post something that's going to be easy to find long term. So anyway, all that, and it's also going to have its own native app, and I think that's the key, right? So if you use your phone, you can just hit the app, and it opens up everything. It's all set up for your phone and all that. So that's where we're headed, and I'm really nervous about it, because I'm putting like a huge amount of time and effort, energy, and money into it. And it's like, hope this doesn't fail. But if it does, we'll do something else. But I think it's going to be really, really helpful to people, a useful resource.
Yeah, absolutely. After hearing you talk about it, and then you pretty much kept going, but wait, there's more.
There's more.
But wait,
Billy May is here.
More, right? There's going to be so much there that everyone's obviously going to really, really enjoy using it, and just find a lot of value from it too. So that's really incredible. When can we expect that to be released?
Yeah, so most of the things I mentioned just now they're basically done. All the infrastructure is in place. Right now, what I'm doing is reaching out to content creators, and you and I have actually already had a conversation about ways to fill the site just packed full. My goal is that when people get to the site on day one, when I open it up to the public, they arrive and they go, wow, this place has been here for years, right? Because there's just so much there. There's already blog posts, there's already courses, there's already cool stuff you can check out and learn from, and resources and all that. So right now, I'm just trying to fill the site up with amazing content, reaching out to people that I love, that I respect, that I really enjoy their content. So I'm reaching out to them and say, hey, you mind cross-posting here? Do you mind adding, your ideas into these different systems as well? So that's where we're at right now. And then the native app. That's going to be a little while. I'm thinking that's probably going to take another month-ish or so, maybe 6 weeks. So I'm really hoping by mid-February, so yeah, 6 to 8 weeks from now, that this thing is live. And I'm going to open it up to play testing, basically beta testing here in a few weeks. I'm going to get content creators in first, and then do their thing, and then we're going to get beta testers in, probably have 50 to 100 people or so. And then right after that, we're going to open up the gates, and we'll see what happens.
That's amazing. And from here, since it is a marketing kind of group after all, I'd love to know, how are you going to be marketing for this?
Yeah, well, it's been a 4-year process. I built up my target audience. The Facebook community has about 7,500 people in it. And so I'm really hoping that the majority of those folks will come on over, cross over and come over to this one too. I'm talking to my friend George, who runs Oniro, I think is the name of it, marketing studio.
Okay, yeah, and Creative.
And he makes amazing videos for like Kickstarter campaigns and stuff. So he's going to put together kind of like a trailer video, a marketing, like a 2-minute video I'm going to put out there and just try to get people excited, right? The biggest thing is just come check it out. If I can get you to come and see it, I think you'll stay. And so that's the thing. How can I get as many people as possible just to come look around? And then I think they'll start seeing the potential, seeing the things that they can get out of it. Another thing is clarity, right? So if you're a gamer, like you just started gaming, you're like, wow, I didn't know there was more than Monopoly. And now you played, Ticket to Ride or whatever. And you're like, okay. And you go on Board Game Geek. It's like, whoa, okay, where do I go? This is overwhelming. So I want the opposite of that, right? I want it to be clear. I want everything to be laid out. I want it to be beautiful, elegant, you might say, where everything is easy to find. Everything is just obvious. So that's another big thing, is like, how to make sure that everything, like if you land on this page, you don't have any issues. You're not like, where do I find this? Well, no, there it is right there. There's the icon. There's the word. There's whatever. This is easy. So all that, trying to put it together. So I think that's really part of marketing, right? Because the worst thing in the world is to spend the money on Facebook ads or whatever to get a lead, right? You get that lead, and then they get to your website, and now they're overwhelmed. Now they don't know where to go. Now it's unclear. It's like clarity is king. Don't try to be clever. Don't try to be funny. Just try to be clear with what you offer and what problem you're solving. State that very, very clearly. And then when people get there, they understand it. And they go, oh yeah, this is for me, and they'll buy it or they'll subscribe or whatever. So yeah, clarity.
So yeah, those are kind of three things actually you mentioned there. Community, building up that community. You've been building up this community for about 4 years now. Value, making sure that there's value up front when people land wherever you want them to go, and that clarity. People know exactly what you're doing and what the offer is and kind of what the benefit is for them. So that's incredible. So this is amazing. I'm so excited for BGVL Plus that's coming out. And thank you so much for your time, Gabe. For everyone else that's listening, if there's any questions, feel free to leave them in the video underneath here. And I'm sure Gabe will come back and be able to answer a lot of them for you. And Gabe, thank you so much for your time. This was wonderful to talk to you today. Absolutely. I really appreciate you having me on. It's kind of fun to be on the other side where I'm just receiving the questions and I get to, kind of wax philosophical for a while. So thanks. Yeah. So someone here also mentioned, it's so great to hear so much from Gabe because they're used to hearing you on the other end. So this is great. That's true. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time, Gabe. Definitely.